The book of Numbers. We had seen that God told the Israelites that if they obey, they'll be blessed, and if they disobey, they'll be punished. In the book of Numbers, we see the decision that the Israelites made. First of all, we start off with the census, having everyone numbered. And by everyone, I mean the males who are 20 years and above. Then the Lord instructed them on how they were to settle down, those on the north, on the east, on the west, and on the south. Then the Levites were also numbered. For them, they actually counted people who are actually males who are 1 month and above, and they were 22,000. And then there was also the counting of all the firstborn males in Israel, for they were to be dedicated unto the Lord, and there were also roughly 22,000. Then the Levites were also given work, and those who were 30 years up to 50 years would serve. And of course, they'd retire at 50 years old, serving in the tent of meeting. And so now there was the confession and admitting of wrong and restitution, that is paying for the wrong you have done. And there's also the laws in the case where the husband is jealous of his wife, when he purports that the wife has slept with someone else. Then there's also the laws of Levites and how they ought to live, what they ought to eat, not shaving, and many other things. Then the chiefs also bring their offerings for the altar. We see that Levites are consecrated and given to the Lord on behalf of the firstborn. You see, you realize that the numbers were the same, about 22,000. Yes, and these Levites were to serve and minister from the age of 25 and retire at the age of 50. How interesting. Now also there was the Passover feast, and now there was a question of whether the unclean people could celebrate it, and now the instructions about how unclean people would celebrate the Passover were given. Note that the Israelites are still being led by the cloud of fire by day and cloud and fire by day and by night. And so there's also the trumpet that was blasted whenever they needed to get some instructions. So Israel left Sinai when the cloud had lifted. And then they went into the desert and started complaining about wanting meat, and there were repercussions to that. Of course, God provided the meat through quails that came, but those who ate with such a craving were struck by a plague and they died. Then Moses complained that he could not lead all these people, that they were complaining. So Moses was also complaining that he couldn't handle all these people. And so God told him to appoint 70 who would also help him with the work. Then Aaron and Miriam also start complaining that, oh, Moses Dan, who is getting leadership, oh, this wife that is not from our clan. And so they complained, and Miriam was struck by leprosy. That made them quite sad, especially the brother Aaron. Yeah, and she had to go through some cleaning process and cleansing so that she could come back to the city. Then spies were sent to check out the land, and they came back saying that it was very good, although they were Anakites only. That Moses and Aaron got a good report from Joshua and Caleb. They told them that, what the Lord has promised is that we'll be able to take over that land. Yeah, so out of the 12 spies, only the 2 survived because they trusted God. The rest died in a plague because of not trusting God. Of course, now there was atonement for the intentional sins described. There was also a Sabbath breaker who was executed, and then there was these men who rebelled, and they were swallowed by the ground because of the rebellion against Moses asking why they are exalted in the assembly. So the Lord punished them. And also there was a plague that killed more people. See how people are dying because of disobedience. Yeah, so the laws of purification they are given. Miriam also dies and is buried. The Israelites still complaining that don't have water, and Moses was instructed to speak to a rock, but yet he struck it because of his anger. Yeah, so the Lord told them that they would not see the promised land because of their disobedience, of course. So they still complain, and in the desert more people die because of this serpent issue and situation, which the Lord restored when Moses was given some instructions. Yeah, they then set out. Sihon had refused to let them pass through their territory, but they were defeated and they were able to pass. Then there's also this Balak and Balaam situation where Balaam couldn't cast the Israelites, but he gave misleading instructions to the people of Moab, and so that's how the Israelites were destroyed in some way, because they mingled with the people from Moab, worshipping other god, and God was angered about that. So we realize that it's been plague after plague where people are just dying because of this disobedience thing. And of course now the old generation is gone and a new census is done. The males 20 years and above. So now this is the new generation, the people who did not leave Egypt. The ones who left Egypt, they all died. But now this is the new set of people who will enter the promised land. Of course, now there's the issue of the daughters of Zelophehad who had no brother, so they had no inheritance. So they were told that they would get inheritance because of the father not having any sons. So, and then also Joshua was to succeed Moses because Moses is about to die in this context. He doesn't die now, but he's about to die. Then there's also the offerings, the daily ones, the weekly ones, the monthly ones, the Passover, which is an annual one, and the Feast of Weeks. So those offerings are described as well. So many other offerings are described, and also now how the vows can be binding, and those 12,000 men to wage war in Midian, killing the men there, and they also killed Balaam, but they did not kill the women, and this made Moses very upset because it is these women who caused the Israelites to sin when they were advised by Balaam. So Moses had all the women killed, and the males who are all the males, even the children males, they were all killed. Yeah, and so the people of Gad, Reuben, and half tribe of Manasseh, they liked the land there before they crossed the Jordan, and so they asked if they can have it. So they were given that land, they were allotted it, but they had to go cross over to help the Israelites to get the promised land. So that was the agreement, that they would help get the promised land first, then they'll come back, but they can leave their wives and their children and their livestock there. Yeah, and at this point now there's sort of a recounting of the journey that was from the time they came from Egypt up to now when they're in the Jordan right before crossing. So Moses told also the names of the chiefs, people who would lead the tribes, the 9.5, the 2.5, of course. And then there was instructions given to set apart cities for the Levites and also for cities of refuge. Then, of course, the issue of the daughters of Zelophehad comes back because of inheritance. The land, of course, would be divided, and now they'll divide according to clans. And so the daughters of Zelophehad were not to marry outside their clan, so that land is not transitioned from one tribe to another. So they were instructed that they would marry within the same clan. So issues of inheritance started long ago, and now as the Israelites are going to enter the promised land and have division of land, this had to be clarified so that there would not be any disagreements. So let's see how people cross over to the Jordan and how the land will be divided and everything else in the book of Deuteronomy. Hopefully we'll learn more and see more about it when they cross over to the promised land. That's been the book of Numbers.